So Tszyu wins a unanimous decision over Errol Spence. This is my analysis of the fight. So going into round one, Spence starts with some good movement and multiple right jabs. Now remember, Spence is southpaw, so that means his right foot is forward and he's jabbing from the right hand. Spence also lands a nice 1-2 to the head and then a 3 to the body. Now Tim is being very patient. He's putting on a lot of front foot pressure and he lands a good counter right hand off Spence's jab. He then follows with a second right hand as Errol Spence is off balance. Spence, however, retaliates with a nice big straight left. This is a swing round because Spence landed more punches, threw more punches, but Tszyu had that big moment with those two big right hands. Going into round two, Tim looks much bigger. That's what I can notice. And he's putting on a lot of front foot pressure. Spence is moving and he's throwing a lot of body shots. There's a lot of movement, a lot of body shots. Tim, again, is putting on a lot of psychological pressure. A nice combo from Spence, right hook to the body, right hook to the head, and Spence finds another nice straight left. Tim, again, physically looks stronger, but Spence, he's more busier. I think at this point, Spence would like to slow the pace down. Going into round three, Tim is very patient. He's being defensively very responsible and he's finding the right angles. Spence is still focusing on the body. This is an investment for later in the fight. As I said, Spence is finding the body, but Tim is making Spence work very, very hard. Spence is starting now to fight a little bit more in the pocket, so he's putting his head on Tszyu's chest. Now, Tim is not going to the body, but he just looks very powerful. And when he lands a punch, it's significant. So going into round four, Tim is using pressure, he's feinting, and he's throwing that lead right, and he's having success. Spence is now trying to stand his ground more, and Spence is trying to get back to the jab, which is essential. The jab is an essential punch for him here. Spence is throwing lighter punches, but Tim is throwing harder punches. Now Tim lands a big right uppercut to the body, and he's now starting to land that punch multiple times. Tim is being very patient, but he's effective with his aggression, and he's being defensively responsible. And I think in this round, the momentum has changed. Going into round five, and again, I'm noticing visually that Spence, he looks much, much smaller. Again, Tim is finding that right uppercut to the body. It's a hurtful shot and it's a scoring shot. And Tim is now starting to win the body attack battle. Now, initially, only Spence was engaged in the body attack battle, but not only is Tszyu engaged in the body attack battle, he's now starting to win it. Spence finds a double right hook to the body, which is nice. And now Spence is starting to transition more to the pocket, so the head on the chest, and he's finding those punches. He's still using a lot of movement, but the rounds are now transitioning through long distance and then mid-range and then the pocket. Spence finds a nice overhand left after switching orthodox, but then Tim retaliates with a nice right to the head. Both are going to the body, so both fighters, both Tim and Spence, are going to the body, but Tszyu's punches to the body seems to be more effective. Going into round six, Spence needs to establish his jab. He really needs to establish his jab and try to get Tszyu to react to his feints. The distance of the fight, again, is changing. Spence is neglecting his jab in round six, and Tim is finding hurtful punches, not only to the head, but also to the body. Tim finds a big right hand, and the lack of jabs from Spence is creating more opportunities for him. Spence is using his legs, but he's not using the jab, and this is a problem. Also, Tim is finishing the rounds much, much stronger. Going into round seven, Tim is in a really dominant position. He's really dominating now, or starting to dominate, or look like he's dominating. Spence again is moving around a lot, but there's no effective jab. Sometimes he flicks out the jab, but he's not able to land the jab. Spence needs to jab and he needs to find that big left. And the front foot pressure is starting to work for Tszyu. Tim is finding the lead right. And Spence is having to use his legs and he's having to use his head movement, which is making him use a lot of energy. And Tim now is pushing Spence back. It's important to notice going into round 8 that Spence's activity is really dropping at the end of the rounds. Again, Spence needs to find the jab and he needs to work harder in the second half of the round. Psychologically, I think this is starting to become very challenging for Spence. Errol Spence is he's now trying to sit on the big left hand. So he's trying to walk Tszyu onto the big left hand and he's trying to hold his ground. The fight again transitions from the outside to going back into the pocket. And it seems that Spence is initiating this at points. He's putting his head on the chest and he's going to the body. Spence is trying to accelerate the pace here. He has tried to push Tim back. And Tszyu is making Spence fight really hard. So going into round 9, Spence has thrown many body punches, but they don't seem to have an effect on Tszyu. Tszyu still looks strong. Tim has been defensively very responsible and has put on constant pressure, but Spence is trying. But even though he's trying, he's under so much pressure, and Spence is now trying to make an adjustment. He's now trying to punch harder, and Tim's pressure is relentless. He's using good feints. Spence finds a great left, but then Tim responds with the right hand. Going into round 10, again, we have the issue with the neglect from the jab, and Spence needs to finish the rounds better, but he looks very tired. Again, Tim is in a very dominant position. He is having success from mid-range, and he's able to negate the jab effectively. Spence finds a nice left, but Tim keeps coming. So even though sometimes Spence is able to land that left, and sometimes he's throwing it straight, and sometimes he's throwing it as a hook, it's not making Tszyu back away. It's not stopping this front foot pressure. Spence is starting again to put his head on the chest, and what he's doing, he's going to the body, and then he's looking for the big left. So he's trying to set a trap. But like I said, Tszyu is being very defensively responsible. Again, Errol Spence's inactivity in the end of the round is a crucial mistake, because some of these rounds are close, but the lack of activity in the end will probably cost him the rounds. Going into round 11, Spence is trying to push forward. I noticed there's a moment where in the clinch he pushes Tim back. Spence is trying to get a dominant position at times. He's putting the head on the chest, he's going to the body, and then he's trying to find that big shot. Again, he's trying to set that trap. Spence is tired, but his heart is pushing him through. Tszyu is quieter in this round, but he's defensively responsible, and at this point, he's fighting in spots. Spence's jab has not been an effective weapon. That's been one of the main narratives of the fight. Tim has shown good defense and has put on good front foot pressure. Going into round 12, it looks like Spence has nothing left, so he just moves as Tim stalks. Spence may have given everything in the previous round, and, you know, he literally is just using movement, but he's not literally throwing any punches. A great body shot from Tszyu, which is set up from the feint, looks like it has an effect. Spence, sometimes he's tapping with the jab, but like I said, it's all movement and there's no offense. And if there is any feinting, it's not effective feinting. Tim lands another big right hand, and Tszyu is punching with real authority. Tim stalks Spence, and, you know, Spence is trying to feint, but again, there's movement, there's feints, there's some tapping, but there's no offense from Spence. And that's the end of the fight. We go to the decision. Tszyu gets the decision. I think a lot of people agree with that decision. And then in the post-fight, Spence retires. So let's just briefly address Errol Spence. He was a great champion. I remember his victory against Kell Brook. I remember his war against Sean Porter and Danny Garcia. I actually vividly remember the Kell Brook fight, as I was a Kell Brook fan, and this was a really good competitive fight. The Crawford fight represented who was the most elite in their generation. It's important to remember that Errol Spence, he fought the best, and in his prime, he was an elite boxer. He has been a credit to boxing. He showed heart in this fight, and he can retire with his dignity intact. It's important to remember that he has given boxing some great moments. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community, and that means I'm interested in your thoughts, I'm interested in your perspectives, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, press like, hype, and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content like this, then simply click here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated.